Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Brian. In today's video we're going to be talking about tuning up one of our favorite tools in the shop, and that's our bench plane or our hand plane. The plane we're going to be talking about today is a beveled down plane, and this is our bench plane. Now to contrast that, I wanted to show you a chisel plane, and this is obviously the bevel is up. Inside this tool, the bench plane, the bevel is down. Now there's other tools that we use commonly in the shop, like this low angle block plane. For these low angle planes, typically the bevel is up on those. And similarly for this low angle jack plane, the bevel is up as well. So our goal today is to make some fine shavings after we made adjustments to our plane. But to do this, we first need to explain a few things about our plane. So we're talking about the same things. We need to explain some nomenclature. The different parts of our plane that we're going to talk about is the cheeks, the sole of the plane, the blade assembly that is shown in here, and this is the lever cap, and this is the lever, and this is our adjustment knob, and this knob is used to push the blade further out. Another important feature that we need to know is the mouth of the blade. So we need to know the distance between the blade and the surface here, and that gap is the mouth of the plane. Another thing to explain is the lateral adjustment of the blade. So we can change the angle and skew the blade by moving this lateral adjustment back here. In addition to that, we have our handles for our plane. Our assumptions going in today are that the sole of your plane is flat and the cheeks are square. If the sole of your plane is not flat, then what you can do is have a flat surface like a piece of steel and use self-adhesive sandpaper and remove everything from your plane and just rub the sole along the surface to get it flat. But we're going to assume today that the sole is flat, and we're going to take this thing all apart and get it ready to make some fine shavings. So we're going to start by taking this apart. Our screw that's right here, we do not need to back that screw out. What we do is we use this lever, and this will allow us to take this off, our lever cap. So we move our lever like that, and now we're able to slide this and take this off. So now we can set our lever cap aside, and now we can take off our blade assembly. So if we take off our blade assembly, we'll take that out, we'll set that aside. Our blade assembly, this part is the chip breaker on top, and our blade is actually on the bottom. And here you can see that the way this was in the plane, the bevel of the blade was down. So this is a bevel down plane. And this part right here is the frog. And this supports the blade. And here you can see some of our adjustments. Here's our lateral adjustment for our plane, and this thumb wheel back here will change this lever right here, and this extends the blade further in or out. So if I rotate that back or forth, you can change the depth of the blade. So one thing I need to point out is that for the blade adjustment, the depth of the blade, this is a slot. And when we put this back on our plane, there on our frog, you can see that this adjusting this thumb wheel ends up being some free play in that, and that's important for us to note whenever we make our adjustments, because this always causes some confusion with those that are initially trying to use a plane. To take the blade apart, we simply flip this over, and this is our chip breaker again. Flip this over, and we back out this screw, but we don't back it out all the way, we just make it loose. And so we make this loose, and then we're able to flip this back over and slide our chip breaker back, rotate it, and then bring it forward and take it out. What we don't want to do is we do not want to push this forward and rake that over the tip, what's supposed to be the sharp tip. So we instead rotate that, bring it forward, and take it out. So now we have our blade separated from our chip breaker. On the back side of our frog are 3 screws. The ones on the outer portions of our frog, these lock down the frog and keep it from moving. So when we get the frog to the position we want, we lock that down. And there's an adjustment screw that's back here, so that once we loosen these these locking screws, we can adjust the frog forward or aft, or towards the toe or towards the heel. So now you know how to adjust the frog. You might wonder why you're going to adjust the frog. So you're going to adjust the frog to change the mouth opening. So when our blade sticks out of here, when we put that back in, moving the frog towards the toe will close this mouth, and moving the frog towards the heel of our plane will open the mouth. Here's an example of what happens when the mouth opening is too narrow. You can see that the chips get clogged and you need to open the mouth up. We're now ready to reassemble our plane and go make some chips. So we start by taking our chip breaker and put it together with our plane blade. Here I recommend turning this sideways, orthogonal, and then sliding it up, and then rotating this like that, and then bringing it down. Be careful with your fingers along the edge of that blade. So basically, we've also assumed that you've already sharpened your blade. This is an assumption going in to our video. Flip over the blade, we tighten this down. And then when we insert our blade into the plane, and then we put our lever cap on. So now we're going to adjust two things. The first thing that we would maybe want to adjust is the mouth opening here. And again, here we do that by moving the frog forward or backward. Let's say that we have that gap to be about what we want it, and we're going to adjust the blade stick out. And so initially you want the blade to be below the surface of the sole of the plane, and then you can adjust this out and have the thumb wheel engage the blade. And what you want to do is you want to move the blade out until it barely sticks out, and then you want to move the thumb wheel in the opposite direction counterclockwise and back it off towards below the sole. And then we're going to go to our workpiece. For depth adjustment, what we want to do is we want to start with the toe of our plane on our board. And then what we're going to do is we'll move the plane slowly, and I can feel I bumped into the board with the blade, and so what I need to do is I need to back the blade out. So I don't want the blade to be engaged with the workpiece at all, and now I've backed it out just enough, and I'm not touching at all when I go across the surface. So what I'm going to do is I want to engage the workpiece. I want to move this thumb wheel on the back while I'm moving along the board. And this will allow me to engage with just a very small shaving. And so as I'm moving along the board, I'm going to turn that thumb wheel. And I first felt it bite there, and so I'm going to try that a couple of times, and I'm just barely getting anything, so I'm going to adjust it a little more while I'm moving, and now I'm starting to get some very small shavings. And you want to do this a couple of times because your workpiece will oftentimes tend not to be flat. And so sometimes it takes a couple of passes before you get the board flat. And so you want to not adjust every time you take a pass, and take a couple passes at the same depth before you decide to make any further adjustment. And now you can see some very fine shavings that we're generating. I'll stop and show you some of those, because this is what we're after, these very fine shavings. You can see through those shavings. This board's a great example of when you would want to use your hand plane. Here's some burn marks that were left behind by the table saw. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our hand plane and remove those. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and more importantly, I hope you'll get out there and adjust your hand planes and enjoy them like I do.